If Granny C or village chief were here, they definitely would have scolded Qinmu for fooling around and putting himself in danger. After all, the god voice was different from the collective voice of the maidens in the ruins. Granny C and village chief would have considered it a mistake to use the chant of the devil voice to counter the god voice and break the wall. If the god voice reacted to the devil voice's chant in a strange way, the end result wouldn't be as simple as Qinmu losing just his life. It was possible that his soul could end up being destroyed. However, neither of the two were there to bring this danger to Qinmu's attention, so he didn't know about the risk. As soon as Qinmu learned the devil voice's ancient chant, he tried it out. When his vital qi reached the space in the middle of his eyebrows, the god voice from the 9 heavens above resounded out as usual, pushing back his vital qi. Qinmu recited the devil voice's chant and both of the voices immediately began to fight one another. Qinmu seized the opportunity to push his vital qi and have it break the spirit embryo wall. However, the god voice always managed to break through his devil chant from time to time, pushing back his vital qi. Despite failure after failure, Qinmu refused to be discouraged and continued to push his vital qi toward the wall. After hundreds of failures, his vital qi finally managed to ram into the spirit embryo wall. However, it didn't break. The spirit embryo wall was still standing. I couldn't utilize all of my vital qi with the god voice distracting me. Qinmu thought to himself, somewhat understanding what had happened. Because of that, the wall didn't break. Having identified the problem, Qinmu continued his efforts to break the wall. Numerous failures later, he finally managed to hit the spirit embryo wall with his vital qi once more. Just like the first time, the wall didn't collapse. Not long after that, he succeeded in hitting it a third time, then a fourth time, and then a fifth time. Since Apothecary had been teaching him how to refine herbs into medicine, Qinmu had developed a nearly endless patience. Refining herbs tested one's patience, wisdom, vision, and finesse. Among these traits, patience was the most important. If a person wasn't patient, they would never be able to concoct effective medicine. Countless failures later, Qinmu could finally hear a cracking sound emanate from the space between his eyebrows. This sound rang out like a gentle, heavenly melody. Even though Qinmu possessed a strong will, he couldn't help but get excited. A crack the shape of a lightning bolt appeared in the spirit embryo wall. The spirit embryo wall was invisible, so it could only be felt, not seen. The moment the crack appeared, a ray of light shone from his brow in the shape of a lightning bolt. As it did, it gave Qinmu a wondrous feeling. If a person were to close their eyes, everything would go completely dark. They wouldn't be able to see the space between their eyebrows, the spirit embryo divine treasure, or the spirit embryo wall. If a person's vital qi created a crack in their spirit embryo wall, they would be able to see a ray of light shining out from the darkness in the shape of a lightning bolt. Once that happened, they would be able to see their spirit embryo wall. Not only did Qinmu see his spirit embryo wall, he could even see the spirit embryo divine treasure through the jagged crack in it. The spirit embryo divine treasure radiated an intense, brilliant light. This sparkling light and thick vital qi bled through the lightning bolt-shaped crack and fused with the vital qi outside the wall. The vital qi on the other side of the wall with the divine treasure was much purer and stronger than the vital qi that Qinmu had cultivated all this time. However, they were similar in that both did not possess any attributes. Qinmu strongly believed that the vital qi he cultivated came from his overlord body, so he was perfectly fine with it being devoid of attributes. Aside from just vital qi, something more mystical lay hidden inside the spirit embryo divine treasure. However, since the wall only sported a jagged crack and hadn't been completely broken, Qinmu couldn't see what else lay within. Qinmu's heart sank as the lightning bolt-shaped crack began to close. The spirit embryo wall apparently wasn't as simple as he thought it was. Although it had a distinct shape most of the time, the formless energy that it consisted of was like a sticky glue. As a result, it could repair itself whenever it was breached. One wouldn't be able to break the spirit embryo wall unless they completely demolished it in one go. My vital qi still isn't strong enough. However, the more cracks I make in the wall, the stronger my vital qi will get. My vital qi will eventually become strong enough to completely break down the spirit embryo wall. The moment he finished raising his spirits, the crow of a rooster jolted Qinmu from his meditation. The sound stirred his heart, and he quickly opened his eyes. Among the strange beasts around Qin Mu were a few bald neck roosters. Each of them was abnormally large and intimidating, being as tall as a normal human. Their feathers were magnificent, but none grew from their necks. These were the birds that had just crowed. "It's almost morning," Qin Mu said in realization, awakening from his trance. Hazy rays of light started to appear in the eastern skies, signaling that dawn would soon break. It was too late for Qin Mu to try and completely break down the spirit embryo wall. It was good that he had finally figured out how to break down walls. As long as he managed to escape the grasp of senior brother Chu and senior sister Qing, he would have all the time in the world to break them. Even though he had only managed to create a crack in the spirit embryo wall, Qin Mu's cultivation had improved to the point where he was confident that he could to escape from them. "It's almost morning," senior brother Chu stated solemnly. "Our 3 junior brothers died at the hands of this little devil," senior sister Qing said coldly. "Their souls in heaven wouldn't be at peace if we let him escape." Qin Mu stood up and stretched his body, pretending not to hear them. The maidens in the plaza continued their bitter struggle against the darkness, stuck at an impasse as light and dark clashed over and over. Soon enough, another crow sounded out. The voice of the darkness became extremely loud and clear, a sign that it was growing impatient. The collective voice of the maidens resounded as well, resulting in a stunning clash between light and darkness. A third crow rang out as the first rays of sunlight suddenly pierced through the darkness in the east, illuminating the mountain peaks nearby. Sunlight shone onto the pitch darkness, forcing it to immediately recede like an ebbing tide. The darkness retreated as quickly as it had arrived, withdrawing beyond the horizon at an increasingly rapid rate. As the light of dawn illuminated the valley, the luminescent pearl gradually descended from the air. Its iridescent light flooded back into the plaza before the sunlight reached the ruins. As the multicolored light vanished, the maidens in the plaza reverted back into skeletons, sitting there motionlessly. It was as if the fierce battle that was fought throughout the night had just been an enchanting dream. Qin Mu had previously heard the villagers talk about the strange things that happened in the great ruins, about how monstrous and outrageous they were. However, seeing them happen with his own eyes was definitely more overwhelming than just hearing about it. Whenever night fell, the darkness would invade. The face of darkness would form and chant in its mysterious devil voice. The skeletons in these ruins would transform into maidens each night as well, taking part in the struggle between light and darkness. All of these strange events simply couldn't be understood. The secrets behind these events were just waiting for people to unearth them. As the herd of strange beasts crept toward the gate to leave the ruins, Qin Mu's figure blended among them. The peaceful beasts seemed to have an unwritten rule forbidding conflict within the ruins, but they would probably become extremely dangerous again as soon as they were outside. On the other side of the herd, senior brother Chu glanced at senior sister Qing, and both of them blended into the herd as well. They slowly made their way over to Qin Mu. The herd continued walking out of the ruins in an orderly manner when suddenly, a sword quietly shot toward Qin Mu from behind. He promptly dodged the strike, resulting in the treasure sword nearly stabbing into a nearby beast. That strange beast roared irritably. "Junior sister, don't use your sword," senior brother Chu exclaimed. "If this herd of strange beasts was to go on a rampage, all of us would just die here." His warning caused junior sister Qing to reclaim her treasure sword and leap onto the back of a strange beast. Leaping from one beast to another, she quickly closed in on Qin Mu. Qin Mu envied senior sister Qing's ability to form a thread of qi and use it to manipulate her treasure sword from dozens of yards away. Although this ability wasn't as astonishing as Butcher's divine arts, he found it impressive nonetheless. Senior sister Qing's footsteps were light and graceful, and her dress spun through the air like a pink lotus. From under that lotus, her feet kicked towards Qin Mu like sharp blades. The leg skill she used was sharp and precise. Each of her kicks seemed like a huge hammer covered in spikes and caused the surroundings to vibrate with a hum. This kind of leg skill could easily shatter huge rocks and even penetrate an iron wall. Qin Mu's eyes lit up as he faced senior sister Qing's whirlwind of kicks. Thinking back to his training, he remembered Cripple telling him about how the heaven-pilfering leg skill had never lost to any other leg skill. A white leg struck out from beneath a pink dress, clashing against a muscular leg clad in beast skin shorts. Although senior sister Qing's legs were long and lithe, They contained an astonishing amount of strength resembling the sharpness of a knife combined with the power of an axe. Qin Mu's legs, on the other hand, were much sturdier, yet they also seemed graceful and light. It was as if they didn't contain much strength at all. Bang! 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 Their legs collided in a series of explosions. Both of senior sister Qing's legs instantly received a myriad of kicks. Qin Mu's leg skill was simply too fast for her to react. The moment Qin Mu's flurry of flashy kicks struck, the astonishing strength in her legs became useless. The strength promptly vanished from her legs as if Qin Mu's legs had devoured it. Crap! As Qin Mu continued to kick at senior sister Qing, her pained legs began to go numb. His kicks struck her waist, chest, and throat like a storm pounding down against banana trees. After an onslaught of blows, Qin Mu's body spun in the air as he wound his body up to deliver a back kick. This kick was different from the leg skill he had been using up to this point. His previous kicks sacrificed power in favor of speed, whereas the kick he was currently preparing to unleash contained a startling amount of strength. Bang! Qin Mu unleashed his back kick, striking senior sister Qing in the face. Her nose flattened into her face and bone fragments flew from her mouth, her chin shattering to pieces. Senior sister Qing flew headlong into the ruins like a piercing arrow shot from a bow. This result proved what Qin Mu believed. The heaven-pilfering divine legs was the best. Qin Mu didn't dare to declare it the best in the world, but it was definitely the best in the village. Even though senior sister Qing's leg skill appeared vicious and overbearing, Qin Mu had heavily injured her before she could even touch him. Furthermore, Qin Mu didn't even use any vital qi, only relying on the strength of his body. Senior sister Qing, however, had directed her vital qi into her legs to increase her strength and raise the speed of her leg skill. In spite of that, she had been crippled in just one exchange. The moment he kicked senior sister Qing away, Qin Mu felt all of his hair stand on end. An extremely acute sense of danger bubbled up inside of his heart. With no time to turn around, he rushed forward. Senior brother Chu had silently appeared behind Qin Mu and unleashed a killing blow. His attack should have struck Qin Mu easily, but he hadn't expected him to be so aware of his surroundings. Leaping from the back of one strange beast to another, the two of them darted about. Senior brother Chu's moved exceptionally quickly as he frantically threw strikes at Qin Mu, aiming for his heart. Qin Mu spared no effort in sprinting forwards and swinging both his arms to block the attacks. Thunderclap 8 strikes, thousand-armed Buddha. Senior brother Chu couldn't help but be shocked. In spite of the fact that Qin Mu had his back turned towards him, he was still able to block all of the attacks as if he had grown several arms. Senior brother Chu had never heard about this kind of technique. Although Qin Mu's thousand-armed Buddha wasn't like old Ma's where rumbling thunder and flashes of lightning accompanied every strike, it still flowed like the wind and was as fast as lightning. Even while he was sprinting across different beasts with his back to senior brother Chu, Qin Mu's defense was incredibly solid, preventing the senior brother Chu from seizing even the slightest advantage. Clang! Qin Mu's scalp went numb at the sudden screech of metal. He immediately glanced down at his arm and saw blood flowing from where he had been injured by a sharp sword. Qin Mu rolled off the back of the beast he was on and ran under its belly, senior brother Chu following him down as well. His hands were empty, but a silver sword flew back and forth around him. Qin Mu's pupils contracted. Senior brother Chu's sword control was much better than that of senior sister Qing. She had controlled her sword and made it fly several yards away from her, attacking enemies from afar. Senior brother Chu, however, kept his sword 1 yard away from him. This was terrifying and particularly dangerous. Using sword control in close combat could easily result in a careless wielder injuring themselves. Doing it required remarkable skill, and meant that the controller's swordplay was formidable enough to warrant absolute confidence. Without precise manipulation of vital qi, one would not dare to control their sword in such a way. Grandpa Butcher and the others never told me how to utilize my vital qi, and Village Chief never told me how to use Overlord Body Qi, Qin Mu thought. Under these circumstances, I'll only be at a disadvantage. Qin Mu's foot abruptly struck a wooden branch that the herd strange beasts must have broken from a tree. Without thinking, Qin Mu used the tip of his foot to direct the tree branch into his hand. This branch came from a willow tree, was around 2 yards long and about as thick as the length of a thumb. Gripping the tree branch, Qin Mu moved quickly, his gaze locked onto the blade of Senior Brother Chu's sword. He didn't pay any attention to the Senior Brother Chu's hands. Qin Mu directed his vital qi in the willow branch, allowing it to course through the wood. However, when his vital qi took up 16 inches of the branch, he lost touch with his qi beyond that length. 16 inches was way too short. Fighting a flying sword with just that length of a weapon was too dangerous. Senior Brother Chu rushed forward, his treasure sword circling around him. It seemed as if an invisible swordsman was holding onto the treasure sword, stabbing, slicing, flicking, hacking, and cutting at Qin Mu in extremely intricate ways. Chi 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 chi. With just a few strikes, the willow branch in Qin Mu's hand had been reduced to 16 inches. As the sword came hacking towards the branch again, it clanged as if it had struck steel. Relief washed over Qin Mu the moment he saw that his vital qi-imbued willow branch could actually block the sword. Keeping his eyes on the blade of the sword, the 16-inch willow branch became his pig-slaughtering knife. He used this stick of wood to unleash the knife skill that Butcher taught him. Midnight battle across stormy cities. Clearing his mind of anything else, Qin Mu threw his heart into executing this knife skill. Faster, faster, faster. Butcher referred to his knife skill as the pig-slaughtering knife skill. The essence of this skill could be described in one word: faster. Faster than a flickering light and faster than fleeting shadows. So fast that, by the time a user of this skill lifted their hand, the pig's head would have already fallen from its body. Focusing his heart and mind on his knife, Qin Mu swung the willow branch with reckless abandon. Both he and Senior Brother Chu dashed under the sprinting beasts, metal clanging against metal as they clashed. The enormous legs of the more gargantuan beasts resembled pillars falling from the sky and pounding against the ground. The slightest bit of carelessness on either of their parts would lead to them being crushed into a paste. Every step the two combatants took seemed chaotic and disorderly, but they actually followed a mysterious rhythm. Whenever the beasts were about to stomp on them, they were always able to dodge out of the way. As they fought, Senior Brother Chu grew increasingly frustrated and shocked at the current situation. He was actually getting beaten by this little devil. The willow branch in Qin Mu's hand was only about 16 inches in length. Didn't that mean it was just a short wooden stick? His sword, on the other hand, was about 2 yards long. The sword control technique, in which he molded his qi into a thread and used it to control his sword, had been taught to him by Li River's 5 elders. Li River's 5 elders were powerful individuals who had broken their celestial being walls and awakened their celestial being divine treasures. That alone would signify how intricate sword control techniques taught by them would be. Aside from the sword control technique, Senior Brother Chu was also using a fist technique that Li River's 5 elders had created, which was called the Li River Arts. This fist technique channeled vital qi out of both arms, making it surge forth like the waves of a great river, splitting apart the shore with peerless might. He hadn't trained it to the level of divine arts, but its power was no small matter. With it, breaking a boulder or crushing rocks into dust was child's play. Yet, in the face of the little devil's small wooden stick, these 2 grand techniques were full of flaws. That wooden stick constantly broke through his defense, raining blows all over his body. Bumps adorned Senior Brother Chu's head, and bruises covered his body. How could he not be frustrated? However, he was more horrified than frustrated. If the wooden stick in Qin Mu's hand were a knife instead, Senior Brother Chu didn't dare imagine the consequences. All of this was too terrifying. This teenager's head didn't even reach his chest. He was 11 or 12 at the most. Even if he had started cultivating in his mother's womb, he shouldn't have been able to reach such an obscene level of skill with his frightening techniques. The cultivation of his vital qi, Senior Brother Chu thought to himself, noticing Qin Mu's weakness and calming down. His techniques may be extremely polished, but his cultivation is pathetically weak. Actually, it'd be more accurate to say that he doesn't possess a spirit body. He might just be an ordinary human. He eventually came to a crucial conclusion. Qin Mu was an ordinary person. He didn't possess spirit body and hadn't awakened his spirit embryo divine treasure. He had probably cultivated using basic techniques such as the Daoyin technique, enabling him to develop a certain amount of vital qi. However, the vital qi that an ordinary person cultivated contained no attributes, preventing them from unleashing much power. This was the reason why Qin Mu's offensive techniques, although better than senior brother Chu's, weren't much of a threat. They didn't have any power behind them. The knife skill this devil brat is using should be a divine art. He just hasn't trained it enough to be able to exhibit its power, senior brother Chu thought. If I could get a hold of this divine art. Senior brother Chu's heart began to feel better. Although Qin Mu couldn't use the knife skill to its full potential, he, on the other hand, was still able to show part of its power. If the knife skill was in his hands instead, it would definitely be frightening. He could tell that Qin Mu's knife skill was a type of battle technique. The divine arts of battle techniques and sword control techniques were different. Sword control techniques freed up a person's hands, allowed your sword to fly and kill enemies on its own, and help make a person's sword skills agiler. The free hands would then be able to attack enemies at the same time as the sword, resulting in a more varied fighting style. Battle techniques, however, were different. Battle techniques followed the most primitive path that required both of a person's hands to control their weapon, allowing their vital qi to surge into the weapon, increase the power of their attacks, and make their divine art much stronger. A few hundred years ago, when both techniques existed side by side, practitioners who cultivated battle techniques and practitioners who cultivated sword control techniques always butt heads over which techniques were superior. However, a genius heir to a lineage of sword control users suddenly appeared out of nowhere and started slaughtering strong practitioners that cultivated battle techniques. The practitioners were either killed, crippled, or fled from him. This genius was none other than the number one man below the gods, the one that Eternal Peace Empire had crowned as their imperial preceptor. Few people cultivated battle techniques anymore. Through generations without a successor, top-tier battle technique divine arts were lost. Only low-quality battle techniques were handed down now. Yet a genuine top-tier battle technique was still extremely powerful, and senior brother Chu strongly believed that the knife skill Qin Mu demonstrated was a real, top-tier battle technique. I definitely need to get my hands on this battle technique, senior brother Chu exclaimed inwardly. Once I subdue him, I'll force him to reveal the cultivation method of this battle technique no matter what. Qin Mu's small wooden stick frantically continued to strike senior brother Chu, who was doing everything he could to try and block them. He couldn't block all of them though, and he received hundreds of hits over a short period of time. Senior brother Chu grew increasingly frustrated as his face became more and more swollen, and the pain racking his body intensified. The more frustrated he became, the sloppier his fighting got, causing the number of times the wooden stick struck him to get larger and larger. It was just a short wooden stick without any power. However, when combined with Qin Mu's strength and the ongoing beating, the damage it caused started to accumulate. Senior brother Chu's body ultimately took a significant amount of damage from that wooden stick, a damage that steadily increased. He's going to beat me to death. The realization made senior brother Chu's blood run cold. Senior brother Chu was finally frightened. At this rate, he'll beat me to death with that small wooden stick. He really wished that Qin Mu was holding a knife instead. Heck, even a blunt one was fine. A small wooden stick naturally held very little power, but with all the beatings he had taken, his face had swollen like a pig's. Even his eyes had become two slits, blurring his vision. Black and green bruises marred his skin while some of his muscles had become paste from the thrashing. Even his joints had received preferential treatment from Qin Mu. Qin Mu had purposely aimed for ligaments and tendons, not the bones. By tearing the ligaments and tendons, any slight movement would cause excruciating pain. Being beaten to death by a small wooden stick truly was too horrifying. Since one wouldn't die straight away, their pain and fear would increase by several times over the course of the beating. The beast herd that had been running above their heads was nowhere to be seen now, having had dispersed the moment they made it out of the gate to the ruins. Qin Mu's strength was also diminishing. He had no idea how long he had swung his knife around, but he couldn't continue doing so. After all, not only had he constantly dodged senior brother Chu's sword, he had also been avoiding the hooves and claws of the giant beasts they had been fighting under. His legs were also sore and swollen from continuously executing his irregular footwork. Even though Butcher's training frequently consisted of bouts of insanity, he still understood that Qin Mu had his limits and would never train him past the point of exhaustion. Qin Mu no longer had the strength to continue swinging his knife, and was relying on just pure willpower to keep going. He knew that, as long as senior brother Chu had even the slightest bit of vital chi remaining, it was his head that would roll. He could only continue beating senior brother Chu to death. Thud! Senior brother Chu collapsed to the ground, unable to endure the beating any longer. His treasure sword dropping with a clank. Qin Mu threw his wooden stick away and grabbed the sword, but couldn't lift it up. His arms were devoid of strength. Qin Mu stumbled forward and kicked the sword hilt instead. Its tip slowly angled towards senior brother Chu who, barely aware of his surroundings, tried his best to squirm away. But he couldn't. His ligaments and tendons were a complete mess. He couldn't even lift a muscle. Paralyzed, senior brother Chu could only watch as Qin Mu struggled to adjust the direction of his treasure sword and kick it towards his neck. It scraped against the ground, dragging dirt along as it moved in little increments towards senior brother Chu until, with one final kick, it pierced through his neck. Blood flowed, pooling around the wound as he struggled to breathe and gurgled through the blood welling from his throat. Relief washed over Qin Mu. His limbs went limp and he collapsed to the floor. He had never been so exhausted before. Lying next to a corpse felt disgusting, therefore Qin Mu tried to move away. Only he had to give up because his body wouldn't budge. It wasn't Qin Mu's first time seeing a corpse. The woman who emerged from the cowskin and senior brother Chu's junior brothers had become corpses as well. Granny C once brought him to a neighboring village to assist in delivering a baby. Aside from being a tailor, Granny C was also a midwife who helped expectant mothers in the area give birth. However, when they arrived, the village had become a graveyard. It didn't matter if they were male or female, young or old. Everyone, including the expectant mother, was dead. Qin Mu's mind had gone blank, as if he were drifting through the sky, floating above the village and taking in the massacre. Granny C had later woke him from his trance, saying that the gruesome scene had scared the life out of him, forcing his soul to leave his body. She had to pull his soul back and stuff it back in. Granny hadn't told him who massacred that entire village, instead of telling him that such a thing was extremely common in the Great Ruins. In light of that, she sternly warned him, "Never give your enemies any opportunities." Senior brother Chu's corpse made Qin Mu uncomfortable, but it wasn't an uncommon thing in the Great Ruins. Here the strong preyed upon the weak. It was the survival of the fittest. Having lived in the Great Ruins from a young age, Qin Mu had already become accustomed to the skirmishes between strange beasts. To him, senior brother Chu's corpse was no different from the corpses of animals. As he lay there trying to blend into the surroundings, Qin Mu suddenly heard footsteps approaching. He struggled to turn his head towards the sound and identify what was causing it. To his complete shock, it was senior sister Qing who greeted him, her face swollen beyond recognition and resembling a pig's. Step by step, she limped over to him using her treasure sword as a crutch. Qin Mu tried to stand up, but his limbs were all swollen with pain. He could only wait there, silently cultivating the Overlord Body 3 elixir technique. His vital chi slowly became active, gently welling up and flowing towards all of his aching muscles. Wherever his vital chi went, the pain would lessen, his senses sharpening as the burning sensation died down. Senior sister Qing continued to limp towards him step by step. Fighting Qin Mu had essentially left her legs crippled. Her face had also received countless kicks, the last of which is the most ruthless. Qin Mu had put all of his strength into that kick, flattening her delicate features like the tail of a poison dragon. In its current swollen form, her face looked as bloated as noodles that had been left to soak overnight. All of her teeth were gone, blood and saliva dripping from the corner of her mouth and splashing to the floor. Her hands, however, were surprisingly fine as they gripped her treasure sword in a way that clearly expressed her hatred and desire to rip Qin Mu into 1,000 pieces. Qin Mu tried to cultivate faster, urging the Overlord Body 3 elixir technique to speed up. He wanted to regain his strength at a quicker pace, but the intense battle he had just fought simply took too much out of him. Only by breaking the spirit embryo wall and awakening the spirit embryo divine treasure could Qin Mu be considered a true martial practitioner. Beating a martial practitioner like senior brother Chu to death despite not being one himself could already be seen as a great achievement. But that was all that it was. He didn't have the strength to continue fighting senior sister Qing. Senior sister Qing finally arrived in front of Qin Mu. She tried to say something, but her mouth and throat were so swollen that she could only let out a gurgle. Frustrated, she lifted her treasure sword and fell forward, ruthlessly stabbing it towards Qin Mu. But suddenly she froze, her treasure sword unable to continue downwards, as if it had met an invisible barrier. "What a cute little lady. This granny is quite fond of looking at you." An elderly woman appeared in their line of sight, walking towards them with a basket in hand. Fear flashed through senior sister Qing's eyes and she trembled upon seeing the woman, slowly backing away from Qin Mu. Before she could get very far, however, a voice boomed from behind her. "Mu'er, you actually used a tiny wooden stick to play around with my pig slaughtering knife skill and took 5,476 strikes before finally bringing this young fellow down. Yet what you ended up killing this little bastard with a sword." Struggling to turn her head, senior sister Qing saw people with grotesque appearances approaching. Among their number was a blind man with a cane, a man missing a leg, a man without any limbs, and a muscular man missing the lower half of his body. One of the more able men carried the muscular man in a large bamboo basket on his back, and the others carried the limbless man on a stretcher. All of these people looked extremely miserable. The only one of them that seemed relatively normal was the middle-aged man carrying the bamboo basket. However, his face was completely disfigured. It seemed to have been skinned, giving him a sinister, frightening appearance. The muscular man who only had the upper half of his body was the one who had spoken. Rage consumed his fearsome face as he glared at Qin Mu and scolded him from afar. "Looks like you still haven't trained enough. If your knife skill was polished enough, you wouldn't even need a small wooden stick or even a knife. You'd be able to chop him to death with your bare hands." "Granny C. Grandpa Butcher. Grandpa Apothecary," Qin Mu croaked, sighing in relief. All of you are here? We raised you with our blood, sweat, and tears. Of course we were worried," Granny C replied, snickering. "Since this was your first night away from home, and you spent it with an unfamiliar woman, we just had to come take a look." Qin Mu blinked his eyes and asked, "How long have all of you been here?" "We've been here since you were furiously clashing with that young fellow under the bellies of those beasts." Butcher snorted. "How else would I know that you used a total of 5,476 strikes?" Qin Mu's face blackened. These old geezers had clearly arrived early during the fight, yet they still let him fight to the death and nearly lose his life. And then he realized why the herd of strange beasts hadn't attacked him or senior brother Chu. Butcher had scared them off. The people from outside the village said that Granny and all the grandpas were bad people. Could that be true? Qin Mu thought to himself. "But I think they're good people," he assured himself. "They must have watched from afar because they believed I could defeat that senior brother Chu." "An overlord body is far superior to a spirit body," Blind said, propping himself up with his cane and smiling at thin air. "We're all very disappointed that you've been reduced to such a miserable state." "Grandpa Blind, I'm over here." Qin Mu coughed gently. "I know where you are," Blind said with a smile, reorienting himself. "You defeated that young fellow using a stick, which means I have taught you well. Don't be proud of that though. You possess an overlord body after all. It's natural for you to be stronger than him. From today onwards, your training will be much more intense. Don't make that bitter face. Why are you so pleased with yourself, Blind?" Butcher said coldly. "He was clearly using my knife skill. And why are you lecturing a corpse? What do we do with this senior sister Qing?" Qin Mu barely managed to get up. He looked at senior sister Qing, who still hadn't recovered from her shock. "Why don't we?" Granny C's eyes lit up as she thought what to do. She nudged Qin Mu, nearly pushing the exhausted youth over, and mischievously said, "Why don't we let her live so she can be your little bride? You were so cute when you were a toddler, but now that you're all grown up, you aren't quite as cute. However, you can have a chubby baby with this young lady. That baby would definitely be very cute as well. After all, Granny still adores children." Qin Mu glanced at senior sister Qing, whose head looked like that of a pig. "Granny, I think I'd rather not." "Shunk. In that case, we should just kill her," Cripple said. Unknown to everyone else, Cripple had appeared behind senior sister Qing. He stabbed her through her heart, an innocent smile on his face. "Gee, Grandpa Cripple, why did you kill her?" Qin Mu asked, stuttering. Cripple pulled his knife out, his smile developing a hint of confusion. You said you didn't want her, so she obviously needed to die. Qin Mu felt resentful, though not because he wanted to make a baby with senior sister Qing. He was just a child of 11 or 12 years after all. Aside from these old monsters he saw every day, the people in the neighboring villages were also fiendish existences. It was rare for him to meet someone around the same age as him. Even without playmates, he still had the heart of a child. "Let's go home," village chief declared as he turned his head to look at the ruins in the valley. "All of us are disabled in some way, so no one can carry you. You will have to walk back on your own." Apothecary smiled at Qin Mu, then said, "Ah, that's right. We prepared the blood of the 4 spirits. Since you didn't come home last night, I still have some with me." Qin Mu nodded, receiving 4 porcelain cups that Apothecary handed to him. Drinking the blood of the 4 spirits, he struggled to walk as he circulated the Overlord Body 3 elixir technique and digested the power of the blood of the 4 spirits. While he did that, he also told everyone about the weird things that had happened in the ruins. Granny C's calm expression wavered. Devils and gods? A huge face made of darkness and skeleton maidens? Interesting. The other villagers also found Qin Mu's account interesting, but none of them had any other opinions. As a result, Qin Mu couldn't help but ask, "Granny, aren't all of you curious about the story behind the ruins?" Apothecary sighed. The kingdom of gods which prospered in the past was reduced to ashes long ago. Now you tell us that gods' bones were clattering and dancing in the night. Could it be that they still refused to die? Deaf stared at Apothecary, reading his lips, then replied, "Regardless of their unwillingness, what reason do they have to exist after already dying? There's no point in caring about the story of this place." "Are you really deaf?" Apothecary asked suspiciously, looking at Deaf's ears. Forged from snow-white iron, Deaf's ears were completely metal. They replaced the flesh and blood ears he would have had and had even covered up his ear canals. Deaf plucked the metal ears from both sides of his head. 3-inch iron plugs jutted from the inner portions of the ears. These needed to be inserted into his ear canals in order to keep the metal ears fixed to his head. "Stab these into your ear canals," Deaf retorted coldly. "Then you'll find out if I'm really deaf." Apothecary smiled slightly and kept quiet. Deaf then plugged his 2 iron ears back into his ear canals, turned to mute and said, "These ears have been getting kind of uncomfortable recently. I need you to help me adjust them." Mute the blacksmith nodded in reply. This elderly family left Qin Mu speechless. He didn't understand how all of them could be so much more interested in Deaf's ear canals than the ruins. "Muir, there are simply too many mysteries in the great ruins," Granny C said with a smile. "Aside from the kingdom of gods in this valley, there are countless other mysteries out there. If you spend all of your time thinking about them, you won't be able to get anything else done." As their group walked in the direction of disabled elderly village, village chief solemnly said, "Since you were able to trade blows with that youth's treasure sword using just a 16-inch wooden stick as a knife, it's clear that your strikes weren't weak. This experience has helped you improve significantly. Why can't I control objects like they did?" Qin Mu asked, his heart quivering. "My vital chi couldn't fill more than 16 inches of that willow branch." He was extremely envious of the youths who were able to control their swords using vital chi when he couldn't. Apothecary shook his head in silence. The vital chi of an ordinary person had no attributes. Controlling objects was impossible for them because ordinary vital chi could not be used to perform such techniques. As an ordinary human, being able to use his vital chi to support 16 inches of a willow branch, then use that willow branch to fight against a martial practitioner like Senior Brother Chu without it breaking was already a remarkable accomplishment for Qin Mu. Neither your overlord body nor your spirit embryo divine treasure has awakened yet, so there's no need for you to be worried. Village chief gave Qin Mu a calm look. Being able to defeat a skilled practitioner of the spirit embryo realm, while in your unawakened state means that, once your overlord body actually awakens, you will be an entire level stronger than everyone else. Granny C and the others were also proud of Qin Mu's performance. Senior Brother Chu was a peak martial practitioner in the spirit embryo realm. He could even use his chi to control his sword close to his body, which clearly showed he wasn't far from reaching the 5 elements realm. Having beaten Senior Brother Chu to death with a small wooden stick, Qin Mu clearly confirmed that village chief hadn't lied about the overlord body that none of them had ever seen or heard of before. The corners of Apothecary's eyes twitch as he thought to himself, the truth that Muir only has an ordinary constitution will get out sooner or later. When that time comes, these people will definitely turn the entire world upside down in despair. However, it really is strange that he was able to defeat a peak martial practitioner to death with a small wooden stick. Could he really have an overlord body? Or is it just the influence of the spirit blood? Even considering the vast amounts of knowledge in his head, these unanswered questions still left Apothecary confused. Consuming the blood of the four spirits made the vital qi inside of Qin Mu become more and more active. This resulted in his inflamed muscles recovering and returning to normal, his blood flowing more smoothly, and his vital qi circulating even faster. As fatigue slowly faded from his body, his footsteps subconsciously sped up. Expressions of astonishment leaped to the faces of Old Ma, Cripple, and the other villagers, but they kept quiet and continued to follow Qin Mu. Qin Mu had discovered that cultivating the Overlord Body 3 elixir technique, while running helped to increase the speed of his cultivation. With the added effect of the blood of the four spirits, his cultivation speed increased even further, leading to him forgetting about his surroundings and sprinting faster. He quickly forgot about his sore muscles as his speed continued to increase. His vital qi circulated throughout his body faster and faster, permeating his flesh, bones, hair, and nails. Sprinting as fast as he could, Qin Mu's current speed gradually surpassed his previous top speed. However, he wasn't aware of this, only feeling more and more relaxed as he ran to his heart's content. Murky drops of sweat eventually began to pour from his body. Mixed into his sweat were bits of black filth and white granulated fat. Only, Qin Mu didn't sense any of the changes occurring in his body. Apothecary and village chief secretly exchanged looks of amazement. Old Ma, when did your vital qi start refining your body? Apothecary asked out of the blue. I was at the pinnacle of the spirit embryo realm at the time, Old Ma replied seriously. I had been training my fists when I suddenly unleashed my first divine art, fist body refinement art. My vital qi resembled azure dragons coiling around my arms. Apothecary then looked at Cripple, who also answered. I was also at the pinnacle of the spirit embryo realm. The day it happened, I was trying to catch up to the wind. I wanted to walk through the sky and step on the very cusp of that gust of air, when suddenly, in the next moment, I discovered the marvel that is vital qi body refinement. My vital qi began whistling out of every pore in my body as if it were wind, and I grew extremely excited. However, right after that, I fell out of the sky and nearly died. It was the same for me, Apothecary said with a sigh. I had been trying to refine my body using my spirit embryo divine treasure as a furnace and my vital qi as herbs. This led me to find out about the wonder of vital qi body refinement. Only then did my vital qi baptize my body like fire. Qin Mu, on the other hand, hasn't even broken his first wall, yet he's already begun body refinement. An overlord body definitely is quite domineering. Cripple laughed. We the spirit bodies can't help but be envious. Apothecary wore a strange expression but didn't say anything else. An overlord body? If Qin Mu really had an overlord body, he wouldn't have been so surprised. Cripple and Old Ma explained all of these things as Qin Mu possessing an overlord body, but he knew the truth. Being a step ahead of people with spirit bodies and reaching body refinement this early with just an ordinary human constitution, such a thing made it so that a formidable practitioner like Apothecary, despite all of his considerable knowledge, couldn't help but feel amazed. Moore hasn't awakened his overlord body yet, but once he does, he'll be able to use his overlord body chi to control objects, see? Granny C said excitedly. Even Eternal Peace Empire's Imperial Preceptor wouldn't be able to hold a candle to him if they were the same age, right? Apothecary's heart sank as he looked at Village Chief. Village Chief remained silent. The overlord body didn't exist, so there naturally would never be any overlord body chi. Ordinary vital chi could never control objects, and when Qin Mu discovered that, the lie would come to light. But before that, Qin Mu first had to awaken his overlord body, which meant he'd have to break his spirit embryo wall. What did an ordinary human need to do to break a wall? Village Chief frowned. Did drinking the blood of the four spirits even have any effect on Qin Mu? How much longer could he hide the truth from everyone? Qin Mu ran like the wind, his vital qi growing stronger and stronger. No matter how many miles he sprinted, the inhabitants of disabled elderly village could always match his stride. Even Blind could keep up with everyone as if he were steadily moving across flat land. Just as Qin Mu entered a certain forest, a pitch-black figure appeared and bellowed, "Die, young'un!" It was the devil ape. It unleashed a furious bellow when it saw Qin Mu, the young'un, invading its territory once again. One-armed old Ma glanced at the raging devil ape. This glance was devoid of emotion. It terrified the humongous beast, making it feel as if it would be dead in the next moment. As a result, it didn't dare to be arrogant, immediately abandoning its territory and fleeing instead. Qin Mu continued to sprint all the way back, his vital qi circulating and thriving as the rest of the journey passed without incident. Only upon reaching disabled elderly village did he wake up from his trance and discover that he was covered in filth. Without him realizing, a thick layer of muck that was either black blood or grimy fat had caked his body. "Moor, go to the river and wash," Granny C said. "Blind, go with him so that the monsters in the river won't take him away." Blind leaned on his bamboo cane and followed Qin Mu to the river. Qin Mu immediately stripped naked and jumped into the water, washing away the filth. Blind gently tapped the surface of the river with his bamboo cane, alarming a huge green fish that had snuck up on Qin Mu. It promptly leaped from the water and splashed several yards away. That fish spanned about 6.5 yards in length, and its whiskers resembled 8 tentacles that were each 3 yards long. After washing himself, Qin Mu looked at the waves of the river. Bravery swelled within his chest, growing into a raging blaze of emotion. His vital qi churned restlessly, surging up toward his throat until he unleashed a guttural cry. It seemed as if he had opened the temperament treasure vault of the gods. The cry traveled throughout the mountains and the forest, causing the surface of the river to tremble. As he sustained the reverberating cry, Qin Mu rose from the water, suddenly dashing across the surface of the river with great strides. With each step, the strength of his feet fused with vital qi that streamed down his legs to create a sudden burst of force. Whenever his feet hit the surface of the river, the water exploded in every direction. Before the disturbed water could even fall back to the river, Qin Mu would already be several yards ahead, running across the water. Tap 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 tap. The crisp sound of Qin Mu's feet slapping against water resounded through the air. Soon enough, he'd run over a mile across the river's surface. Qin Mu felt as free as a bird, his cries growing more and more ecstatic. He happily ran to his heart's content, his broad strides and carefree footsteps taking him all over the river. It sounded as if heavenly music played by a band of immortals were descending from the sky, accompanied by the melodious cries of a dragon and a phoenix. Qin Mu's speed was astonishing. In just a short time, he had already managed to run from one side of the river to the other. A gentle wind blew across the river's rippling surface as he already began making his way back to the side he had started from. Blind propped himself up with his bamboo cane as the wind swept over him from the river, ruffling his white hair. Listening to Qin Mu's cries of excitement, he gently nodded his head and smiled. Whilst the monkey cried incessantly from one side of a river to another, the dreadfully cold wind froze his crotch, he recited loudly. "Don't you feel cold while happily roaming the river with your rear exposed, Moor?" Qin Mu fell into the water with a splash, a cry of astonishment echoing from the center of the river. A moment later, the youth swam ashore and exited the water in embarrassment, drying his body so that he could put his clothes back on. Qin Mu's moment of enlightenment at the bank of the river made him get ahead of himself, causing him to completely forget he was naked and start sprinting across the river. Yet, as he did this entirely naked, it had actually been quite cool and refreshing for him. "It's a good thing that Grandpa Blind can't see," he thought to himself. Qin Mu got dressed and was in the middle of adjusting his shirt when he suddenly looked up. Old Ma, Mute, and the rest of the villagers were standing in the forest in front of him. Even Granny C and Village Chief, who was being carried on a stretcher, had come. Qin Mu's face turned beet red. "Gee, Granny, when did all of you get here?" he asked, stuttering. Granny C burst into laughter and said, "Moor, all of us have seen your butt countless times, so there's nothing to be embarrassed about. We heard your lively cries and came over to have a look." "Come here, Moor," Village Chief said, coughing gently. Since you were chased down by 5 practitioners of the spirit embryo realm, you probably have some injuries that are harder to notice. Let Apothecary examine you. Qin Mu stepped forward and allowed Apothecary do a thorough examination of his body. Finishing up, Apothecary shook his head and said, "There are no major problems. All of his wounds are superficial." Village Chief then carried out an examination of his own. They indicated that Qin Mu could leave. Butcher immediately dragged him away to have him train his knife skill. Unsatisfied with how Qin Mu needed to use over 5,000 strikes to beat that senior brother Chu, Butcher had decided to put him through merciless training. Apothecary watched Qin Mu's vigorous knife training as he walked over to Village Chief's stretcher. "Did you discover anything?" he asked. "The speed at which his vital qi cultivation is advancing is extraordinarily fast," Village Chief exclaimed, hiding nothing. "The difference between yesterday and today shows that his progress is beyond my imagination." His cries from earlier could have only been made by having his throat resonate with vital qi. They even possess god and devil characteristics. Ignoring the fact that he has yet to break his spirit embryo wall, even a spirit embryo realm practitioner wouldn't be able to achieve god or devil resonance. If we were ordinary humans like him, it would take us 20 years to cultivate our vital qi to that point. The cries that Qin Mu had subconsciously released as he ran across the river were the result of his throat resonating with vital qi. At the same time, however, he had inadvertently infused his cry with aspects of the devil voice he had heard in the ruins. The strange thing was, he had also memorized the collective voice of the maidens while analyzing the devil's voice. Therefore, he had committed every single part of their god voice to memory. As a result, his had also infused aspects of the god voice into his cries without realizing it. When the others heard Qin Mu's cries, they considered them normal because they couldn't detect the profoundness behind them. However, since Village Chief could hear it clearly, it definitely wasn't a small matter. God and devil resonance. Apothecary jumped in shock. How did he achieve such a thing? It's simply too terrifying to achieve 20 years' worth of cultivation overnight. Could the blood of the 4 spirits have caused this? Village Chief shook his head. Even though the blood of the 4 spirits can improve his constitution and vital qi, enhancing them to such a level is impossible. Apothecary thought deeply to himself, then replied, "Could it be that Moore is actually a natural genius? Could he have been the perfect seedling for cultivation since he was born? Why would a natural genius have the constitution of an ordinary human?" Village Chief frowned. A natural genius would have been born with a spirit body. Furthermore, to actually achieve god and devil resonance, which genius could do such a thing? Is the god and devil resonance in his cries good or bad? Apothecary asked. "I have no idea," Village Chief replied. "I heard both god and devil resonance in his cries. The god voice and the devil voice within them were fighting against each other. I'm not sure if that's good or bad." Apothecary gaze faltered and he asked, "If that's the case, where did the god voice and the devil voice come from?" "I don't know." The heads of both men began to ache. It had been a long time since they had a headache, because they couldn't understand a situation. The number of things they couldn't understand had only continued to increase ever since they adopted Qin Mu, who had floated down the river as a baby. Night soon fell, and disabled elderly village was once again shrouded in darkness. At a certain wooden house, Granny C slept in her room and Qin Mu slept on his own. Halfway through the night, a somber voice resounded within the mind of the unconscious Qin Mu. A melodious voice echoed in response. These were the god and devil voices from before. They started to fight each other, their voices growing noisier and louder. The resonance of the god and devil voices slowly intensified into a clash between darkness and light. Within his mind, Qin Mu suddenly turned into a formless soul floating in the sky above that clash, blankly staring below him. The location of this fight between darkness and light looked exactly like the ruins where he first witnessed such a spectacle. However, this place was much more vast and majestic. The darkness resembled tentacles constantly piercing through the light, while the light would suddenly strike in short bursts, wiping out the darkness. Moments later, Qin Mu was finally able to clearly see what made up the darkness and the light. The darkness was actually endless waves of devils swarming toward the light like gushing tides. The devilish voice wasn't the voice of a single entity, but the war cries of billions of devils. This was the same for the light. It was actually a sea of gods wearing golden armor crying out, swarming to fight the devils. Qin Mu currently stood high above this struggle, making all of the gods and devils seem like tiny dots. He had thought it was the clash between light and darkness because he was too far from the conflict to get a clear look. Now that he could see what was actually happening, shock and horror overwhelmed him. Qin Mu suddenly opened his eyes, his body drenched with sweat. He realized that the vociferous voices of gods and devils were filling his mind, threatening to split his head in two. However, right at that moment, the jade pendant he wore at his chest slowly rose into the air, floating up to the center of his brow and gently coming to rest there. A soft, soothing feeling flowed into Qin Mu's head, and the voices vanished. Qin Mu sat up abruptly, breathing deeply as confusion filled his heart. He had no idea what had just happened. Moments later, he left the house and walked through the village, comparing his jade pendant and the ghostly glow of the village's stone statues. Darkness enshrouded everything outside the village, so the jade pendant gave off a similarly ethereal glow. Qin Mu stared at the pendant in a daze, his eyes shining with its glow. He seemed to be unable to take them off of it. Unknown to him, Granny C approached from behind and happened to see this haunting scene. Even though we have disabled elderly village raised him, he doesn't belong with us, she thought to herself, heart aching terribly. He'll have to leave someday. Then, all of a sudden, determination appeared in her eyes as she resolved herself. The outside world is much more dangerous than the great ruins. He isn't strong enough. Not yet.